Yeah, and you can see it in the film. There's a big face, big hand mark. I was so kind of shocked, but it set me up for the right feeling for him.
In 1979, Meryl Streep walked onto a movie set as a rising star. She left as a broken woman who would never speak to her co-star again. During filming, something happened that she kept secret for 40 years. It wasn't just method acting gone wrong, it was something much darker. In 2018, she finally broke her silence about what Dustin Hoffman did to her. The truth shocked Hollywood. It involved her dead boyfriend's name, flying glass, and a slap that changed everything. What happened on that set explains why she refuses to work with him ever again. She was born Mary Louise Streep on June 22, 1949, in Summit, New Jersey. Her mother, Mary Wilkinson Streep, was a commercial artist who worked for a local paper, always sketching and bringing that creative spark into their home. Her father, Harry William Streep Jr., worked in pharmaceuticals, a stable, middle-class job in a corporate world that didn't leave much room for wild dreams. He made up the nickname Meryl himself, just something playful, a blend of her names. She was named after her mother, her grandmother, and a close friend of the family named Louise Buckman. That quiet mix of tradition and imagination sat in their house in Basking Ridge, where Meryl grew up with two younger brothers and plenty of freedom to imagine. Her younger brothers, Harry William Streep III and Dana David Streep, were born in 1953 and would both become actors too. Dana married Mary Beth Simon in 1977, tying the Streep family to U.S. political history through her father, Treasury Secretary William Simon. It was a household full of art and odd turns, where their mother cheered on anything creative and their father quietly supported whatever path they took. It wasn't loud encouragement. It was just understood that if you were good at something, you followed it. At 12, Meryl started traveling from New Jersey to New York City for opera lessons with Estelle Liebling, one of the most respected voice teachers of the 20th century. Liebling had taught 78 Met Opera stars and toured with John Philip Sousa in the early 1900s. Meryl had a strong coloratura voice and learned to breathe from her back and open her chest in 3 dimensions. But she didn't love opera. She loved boys, cheerleading, and the way school felt alive. Singing in languages she didn't understand just made her feel hollow. After 4 years of lessons, she quit. She later said she learned something important then: never pretend to feel something. Only do what you can feel through. She was quiet, almost shy, and compared herself to her mother, who could light up a room like Dame Judi Dench. Still, she could turn it on when she had to. She could switch from silent to magnetic in a second. At Cedar Hill Elementary and Oak Street School, she tried acting. In one school play, she played Louise Heller in The Family Upstairs. She went to Mass with her Catholic friends even though she was raised Presbyterian, learning early how to fit into different spaces. Her mother kept telling her she could do anything. If she tried, she'd succeed. If she was lazy, she wouldn't. That voice stayed in her head forever. In home movies, she was already practicing. At 8 years old, she won a costume contest at Camp Olcott by dressing as a little old lady and acting the part better than any other kid. At home, she did impressions and silly voices to make her brothers laugh, mimicking accents and facial expressions without knowing that this was rehearsal for the life ahead. She was awkward, frizzy hair, glasses, too tall, unsure of herself. But that didn't matter. She was already learning how to disappear into someone else. By 1966, her senior year at Bernards High School, she had changed. Her family had moved to Bernardsville in 1963, and by the time she was 17, she was a varsity cheerleader and had just been crowned homecoming queen. The local paper described her as a pretty blonde honor student with blue eyes. She acted in musicals too, Marion the Librarian in The Music Man, and Daisy May in Lil Abner. But she was still living a double life. One part of her loved the spotlight. The other smoked cigarettes behind the school and tried to fit in with her friends. She damaged her singing voice during those years, but she didn't mind. Opera was gone. Something better was coming. She entered Vassar College in 1967. At first, she thought she'd study law, but one professor told her she was too pretty to be taken seriously in theater. That strange insult made her dig in. She switched majors and never looked back. In 4 years, she performed in 40 plays. In one role, she learned to shape her voice into 27 different tones. She would sit in diners, record conversations, and then mimic the voices in her dorm room until she had them down cold. By 1971, she could deliver a single monologue in 6 regional accents, one after the other. Her professors said she might be the best actress of her generation. No one believed it yet, but they were right. That same year, she got into Yale Drama School. Only 16 students were accepted. She performed in 40 plays during her 2 years there, surviving on 4 hours of sleep a night, smoking Marlboros backstage, and losing 15 pounds from stress. In 1973, she played a male soldier in Henry V so convincingly that no one realized she was a woman until the final curtain. Sigourney Weaver, her classmate, said Meryl scared her. She never broke character. During finals, she was in 3 plays at once, changing costumes in bathroom stalls between venues. By the time she graduated, she'd memorized more than 10,000 lines of classical text. In 1975, she finally stepped onto the Broadway stage. Her first role paid $150 a week, barely enough to afford her $200 apartment in Hell's Kitchen. She was luminous, the critics said, but it was her next part that left people breathless. In 1976, she played a sexually abused Southern woman in 27 Wagons Full of Cotton. Tennessee Williams came to see it 3 times and told her she understood the South better than any Yankee ever had. She gained 20 pounds for the role and nailed a thick Mississippi accent by spending 2 weeks talking to truckers in Alabama. For all 8 weeks of the run, she stayed in character, never dropping the voice, even at parties. From 1974 to 1976, she also worked off-Broadway in productions like The Cherry Orchard and Measure for Measure in Central Park. She earned $200 a week and acted through thunderstorms, helicopters, and heat. One night in 1975, a downpour soaked her mid-scene, but she kept going. A critic called it the most electric moment of the decade. She waited tables at O'Neill's until 2 a.m. and showed up at 9 a.m. for rehearsals. She once fell asleep, standing up during a costume fitting, but she never quit. In 1977, her whole world shifted. She made her film debut in Julia, 2 minutes and 48 seconds of screen time, just a flash. She earned $2,500. She threw up twice before shooting because she was so nervous. The director almost cut her scene, but someone noticed her, and then everything changed. That same year, her partner, John Cazale, the brilliant actor from The Godfather, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. They had been together since 1976. She took the role in The Deer Hunter just to stay near him. When the studio found out he was dying and wanted to fire him, she threatened to walk. She used her own money to cover his insurance on set, about $40,000. She wrote all her own lines for her character, Linda. She stayed with him through the 6-month shoot, and when he died on March 12, 1978, weighing just 98 pounds, she read a sonnet at his funeral and then went silent for 3 days. She later said that pain was her greatest acting teacher. Just 6 months later, she met Don Gummer, a sculptor who helped her move out of John's apartment. They married that same year and eventually had 4 children. In Holocaust, she played a lead role to help pay for John's medical bills. The miniseries aired in April 1978 and was watched by 109 million Americans. When it aired in West Germany in 1979, 20 million people tuned in. The reaction was so powerful that the country canceled the statute of limitations on Nazi war crime. Streep won an Emmy. Her grief had turned into something much bigger than herself. Then came Manhattan. Then The Seduction of Joe Tynan. Then Kramer versus Kramer, all in 1979. 3 films, 3 characters, 3 completely different voices. She played a bisexual ex-wife, a driven labor lawyer, and a heartbroken mother in a custody battle. She won her first Oscar. Critics called her a chameleon. No one had ever done what she did that year. She didn't just act, she disappeared. She showed what acting could really be, not pretending, but becoming. And the girl with frizzy hair, glasses, and a shaky singing voice had quietly become the greatest actress of her generation. He was born on August 8, 1937, in Los Angeles. But even before he opened his eyes, the past had already marked him. Dustin Hoffman came from a family trying to stitch itself together after fleeing something too dark to name. His grandparents had escaped pogroms in Romania and Ukraine, arriving at Ellis Island with trauma packed tighter than their luggage. His mother, Lillian, gave up her dream of jazz piano, and his father, Harlan, earned $45 a week selling furniture at Columbia Pictures. They moved 7 times before Dustin turned 12. Each move tightened the belt. Food ran low. Shame ran high. At 14, Dustin stuffed stolen bread into his coat because no one else was going to. He didn't fit in. Pasadena in the 1940s didn't make room for kids with Jewish surnames and big noses. Classmates called him Dusty and mocked the way he looked. He stood 5'6" and hunched under the weight of being different. But the hurt turned sharp, then sharper, until it became a tool he'd carry into every role he ever played. At 19, after 2 years pretending to study music at Santa Monica City College, he dropped out. It felt reckless, but nothing scared him more than staying stuck. His parents had spent $600 they barely had on tuition. He paid them back by pumping gas at $1.25 an hour and watching over patients in a mental hospital for $48 a week. He saved $300. It was all he had. In 1958, he took a Greyhound to New York. No plan, no place. Just a suitcase and a broken idea that maybe he could act. He slept on benches in subway stations and paid 50 cents to shower at the YMCA. He made $42 a week plus tips waiting tables at Howard Johnson's in Times Square and handed $15 of it to Lee Strasberg's Actors Studio every month. Strasberg demanded emotional blood. One day, Hoffman broke down in class, sobbing about his grandmother's death. 45 minutes, he cried, and when it ended, something new started. He wasn't just pretending anymore. He was digging from the wound. His first off-Broadway role paid $35 a week and folded after 23 nights. One critic called him painfully amateurish. The second play paid $50 a week. In 1965, he split a $75 rent with Gene Hackman and Robert Duvall in a crumbling apartment. 3 actors, 1 hot plate. They ate canned beans and chased 200 auditions that year. Hoffman was told over and over that he was too short, too weird, too ethnic. In December, he made $5 a day showing wind-up monkeys to kids at Macy's. He added it all up, $860 from acting that year. Then something shifted. In 1966, he landed a Broadway role in Journey of the Fifth Horse. It paid $175 a week and earned him glowing reviews. But when the production closed after only 95 shows, he panicked. The awards meant nothing if you couldn't buy diapers. He even filled out a job application to sell insurance for $9,500 a year. That same year, he got cast in a single TV episode for the Star Wagon. It paid $1,200, more than 6 months of work. For the first time, he felt seen. In May 1967, he married Ann Byrne. They already had a daughter, Karina, born in March 1966. Diapers alone cost $12 a week. He missed her first birthday because he was sleeping in Central Park to research a role. For another part, he refused to speak to Ann for 11 days. Hackman later said Hoffman would spend 8 to 10 hours a day talking to himself in character, barely eating. Ann filed separation papers twice before they finally divorced in 1980. That fall of 1966, Mike Nichols was hunting for someone unknown to play Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate. Robert Redford looked too clean. Warren Beatty wanted too much. Producer Lawrence Terman saw Hoffman on stage and brought him in. He was 29, auditioning to play 21. He showed up sweating, 20 minutes late, knocked over a water glass, and stumbled through the lines. But it worked. He felt like Benjamin. Nichols saw it too. 2 months later, after 3 callbacks and 5 different screen tests, they offered him $17,000. It was more than everything he had made in his entire life. They began filming in June 1967. When The Graduate hit screens, it exploded. It pulled in $104.4 million at the box office and became the biggest film of the year. But Hoffman only walked away with $4,000 after taxes. He had to file for unemployment while his name lit up marquees across the country. He was so nervous during filming that he barely slept. He told himself over and over he didn't belong. When Gene Hackman got fired from the movie after just 3 weeks, Hoffman was convinced he was next, but it worked. It all worked. Hoffman got his first Oscar nomination and became the accidental face of a generation that didn't trust anyone over 30. Then came Midnight Cowboy. Hoffman played Ratso Rizzo, a dying hustler with a limp. The famous line, "I'm walking here," wasn't in the script. It happened because a real cab almost hit them. Hoffman slapped the hood and screamed, all while staying in character. Director John Schlesinger had hidden the camera in a van and had no idea what had just happened. They shot it 2 more times, just to keep the chaos alive. Hoffman kept pebbles in his shoe every day to make the limp real. In Little Big Man, he aged from 17 to 121. The makeup took 5 hours a day. Dick Smith studied photos for every wrinkle. Hoffman wrecked his voice sitting in cars for hours, trying to sound ancient. During one monologue about Custer, the camera rolled take after take until Hoffman's body nearly gave out. At 33, he played a man so old he seemed to be falling apart. Then came Straw Dogs. Hoffman played a quiet mathematician who gets pushed too far. The violence in the film broke him. Director Sam Peckinpah wanted raw emotion, and Hoffman gave it. But it came at a cost. He argued hard to recast the lead actress, worried the story was veering into exploitation. He was a pacifist, forced to act out a man's descent into rage. The home invasion, the rape scenes, it all felt too real. But it stuck. The film stirred outrage and earned awards. By 1974, he transformed again, this time into Lenny Bruce. He dropped 15 pounds, lived like a ghost. There's a 10-minute scene where he wears only a raincoat and 1 sock, rambling, broken, wired on drugs. 1 take. Critics called it one of the greatest scenes ever filmed. Every line about censorship and death rang too loud to ignore. Hoffman got his 3rd Oscar nomination. Director Bob Fosse shot it all in black and white. It looked like death. Then came All the President's Men. Hoffman and Redford digging into Watergate. He chain-smoked through scenes, bathed in ugly fluorescent lights to match the mood of paranoia and exhaustion. The typewriters clacked non-stop. Extras whispered in the background. Redford and Hoffman sat facing each other at odd angles, a subtle way to show how much they clashed before they learned to work together. The film won awards. It got archived for being culturally and historically important. But Hoffman didn't care about labels. He was chasing something deeper. For Marathon Man, he lost 15 more pounds, ran half a mile before each take to look out of breath, let them hold him underwater during torture scenes until he gasped for oxygen. When Laurence Olivier found out Hoffman stayed awake for 72 hours just to look tired, he shook his head and said, "Try acting, dear boy. It's much easier." In Straight Time, he played an ex-convict so convincingly it scared his own cast. The source material came from Edward Bunker, a real ex-con who spent time in San Quentin. They worked together closely. Hoffman lived as if he were on parole for 6 months, watching the way men like that moved, talked, flinched. He even helped direct parts of the film, brushing aside the actual director's authority. Co-star Harry Dean Stanton admitted one improvised robbery scene left him shaken. Then came Agatha, the film about Agatha Christie's missing days. Hoffman played a journalist and turned the set upside down. He demanded rewrite after rewrite, stalling the shoot for weeks. Vanessa Redgrave lost patience. Scenes changed, characters shrank. The original writer, Kathleen Teenan, felt heartbroken. The film came out in 1979 after over a year of chaos. It only got one Oscar nomination for costumes. That same year, Hoffman married again. Lisa Gottzigen. They had 4 children. Jacob was born in March 1981, but nearly didn't make it. His lungs were underdeveloped. Hoffman sat in the hospital, scared out of his mind. They stayed together, through it all. Lisa brought calm, but Hoffman's acting style kept shaking the ground under their feet. On the set of Tootsie, director Sidney Pollack said he'd give up his Oscar just to get back the 9 months of torment Hoffman caused him. Terry Garr called him controlling. He couldn't turn it off. He lived inside every role. By 1979, he was 42 and had pulled in $50 million at the box office from the past decade. He'd built a mountain from scratch. But behind every hit, people whispered about how hard he was to work with, how he'd push extras, demand breakdowns, chase the perfect take no matter what it cost. In 1978, the cameras rolled in New York City as Kramer vs. Kramer began production with an $8 million budget and a script adapted from Avery Corman's 1977 novel. At first, Dustin Hoffman wanted nothing to do with it. He was in the middle of his own painful divorce and had almost sworn off film altogether, thinking of going back to the stage. James Caan said no. Al Pacino said no. Jon Voight turned it down too. Only while filming Agatha in London did Hoffman finally agree to take the role, meeting with the director Robert Benton in a hotel room. Once in, he went all in. He demanded real New York apartments instead of film sets, and added so many rewrites and personal moments from his own life that Benton offered him co-writing credit, which Hoffman turned down. His scenes with the boy, Justin Henry, didn't follow any script. The child was just 7 years old and had never acted before. He was cast after a neighbor who happened to be a casting director spotted him. Hoffman trained him personally. That now famous scene where little Billy refuses to eat his ice cream? Completely improvised. Meryl Streep wasn't even supposed to play Joanna. At first, it was Kate Jackson from Charlie's Angels, but her TV shooting schedule clashed and she had to drop out. Streep had originally been cast for just 2 short scenes as a one-night stand. Then everything changed. She was 29, barely known in film. The Deer Hunter and The Seduction of Joe Tynan hadn't come out yet. She showed up at a New York hotel to audition for the lead. reading Joanna's goodbye monologue. As soon as she left the room, Hoffman and Benton looked at each other and said she was it. But she didn't want to play a villain. She argued hard for Joanna's emotional depth, insisting the character wasn't just a woman who left her child. She pushed to make her human. The production was tense. Hoffman's perfectionism blew through the budget. He clashed with actress Gail Strickland, who was originally cast as Margaret. He taunted her so relentlessly during rehearsals, often mocking her delivery or throwing unscripted lines at her, that she ended up being replaced by Jane Alexander. Strickland left shaken. Around the same time, Streep was grieving deeply. In March 1978, just months before filming, her partner, John Cazale, had died of lung cancer. She had stayed with him until the very end. She arrived on set raw and hollowed out from loss. Hoffman didn't hold back. On her second day of filming, her first big scene, he slapped her across the face. It was the hallway scene where Joanna leaves. There was no warning. Her cheek turned red with the mark of his hand. The camera caught it, and it stayed in the final cut. Hoffman said he wanted realism. Benton was shocked, but didn't yell "cut." Streep was furious. In another moment, during the restaurant scene, Hoffman didn't tell anyone, not even Streep or the director, that he was going to hurl a real wine glass against the wall. It shattered violently, and shards flew into Streep's hair. She kept going until the scene ended. Then she told him, "Next time you do that, I'd appreciate you letting me know." But the most cruel moment came during the courtroom scenes. Just before the cameras rolled, Hoffman leaned down behind her chair and whispered one word into her ear: "Cazale." He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted her to cry, and he used her grief to get it. Streep later said she felt violated. She hadn't agreed to any of it. Even the rewritten courtroom speech became a battle. Streep rewrote it herself, trying to give Joanna more honesty, more power. Hoffman rejected parts of it, said she didn't understand the film. He called her too emotional. The irony was impossible to ignore. He had slapped her, shattered glass near her eyes, invoked her dead fiancé, and still accused her of being too much. Benton tried to keep the peace, but the damage had been done. Yet the movie worked. When it opened in December 1979, it became a phenomenon. The story hit home for millions. It grossed over $106 million at the U.S. box office, making it the highest-grossing film of the year. It beat out Alien, Rocky II, and Star Trek, the motion picture. At the 52nd Academy Awards on April 14, 1980, hosted by Johnny Carson, it won 5 Oscars out of 9 nominations. Hoffman won Best Actor. Streep won Best Supporting Actress. She thanked Benton in her speech, but never mentioned Hoffman. Hoffman stood on stage holding the statue and said, "He has no genitalia, and he's holding a sword," then gave a passionate speech about actors and respect. It was one of the night's strangest moments. Behind the camera, the cost was higher. Streep had been harassed, slapped, insulted, and emotionally manipulated. She kept quiet. For decades, she never spoke publicly about what happened on that set. She stayed professional. She moved forward. And she rose faster than anyone expected. In 1983, she won her second Oscar for Sophie's Choice. Her career exploded. Over time, she earned 21 Academy Award nominations, more than any actor in history. She won again in 2011 for The Iron Lady, films like The Devil Wears Prada, Doubt, The Post, and August. Osage County brought her nominations again and again. She never faded. She never vanished. She picked complex, difficult roles and made them hers. She proved she didn't need method violence or male permission to create brilliance. Then came 2017, The silence began to break. In November, a woman named Anna Graham Hunter, who had worked as a 17-year-old intern on the 1985 TV movie Death of a Salesman, wrote about being groped and harassed by Hoffman. He had asked her vile questions, made cruel jokes about sex, and humiliated her in front of crew members. She said he once told her, "I'll have a hard-boiled egg and a soft-boiled clitoris." More women came forward. By December, there were 7 accusations, including stories about him exposing himself and sexually assaulting a woman during Ishtar in 1987. His lawyers denied everything, calling it defamatory. Then, in a 2018 New York Times interview, Streep finally broke her silence. Nearly 40 years after the slap, she said softly, "It was my first movie. It was my first take. And he just slapped me. It was overstepping." The moment wasn't just about a slap. It was about a whole era where women were supposed to stay quiet and keep performing, no matter how they were treated. But Meryl Streep didn't just survive Kramer versus Kramer. She turned it into a launchpad. She built a legacy on her own terms, and no slap, no wineglass, no whispered name could ever take that away.